Hey, Alcibiades. Do you want to be in the video? You a history dog? Yeah, you're documentable to the 1750s. A Frenchman and his Pomeranian bitch? That's you. You're the Pomeranian bitch.
So Alcibiades and I have another video for you, as promised. It's the embroidered baby cat video. Here it is. So this is going to be a video about making this cap, and we have our willing model here. Well, perhaps less than willing, but I thought it's the closest thing I can get to a baby. Thank you for humoring me. Do you want some cheese? Now, before we move on to the actual embroidery, I wanted to highlight one of the specific garments I'm wearing for this, and that is a black silk apron. And this is a really common garment that we see in images of people doing handwork, so that's anything like embroidery, knitting, knotting, sometimes even spinning if they're in an upper class environment. And the reason this garment is so protective is because the silk allows all debris to slip right off of it. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background of why I'm wearing this particularly now, because it is both a fashionable garment as well as a very functional one for the activity that I'm about to do. I'm beginning by basting a piece of the silk taffeta to a medium weight linen using a thin silk thread, and I'm using a pencil to trace my pattern pieces. And here I'm just planning out how much space is going to be taken up by this lace edge so that I can begin to draw out my pattern for the embroidery. This is my progress so far on the embroidery. I began using a couching technique with metallic thread to make the stems, and then I used a long and short stitch for the leaves, and I'm using the same stitch with the silk threads to make the petals. In this area, I'm doing ribbon embroidery, and I wanted to make a raised structure, and so for that I'm using a very coarse linen thread to make a few stitches, and then I'm using the ribbon to make stitches over that to give it a bit of loft and some structure. So here I've begun embroidering the second side, and I've gone with a similar but not exactly symmetrical design, so they just complement each other but they're not exactly the same. And for this side, I'm using all of the same techniques as I did on the first side. Here you can see how the embroidery has been completed. I removed the original basting and replaced it with new basting stitches after I ironed the fabric. I also have cut down the seam allowance, and I've traced the outline of the pattern piece on the lining as well. Technically this is an interlining because there will be another lining that's added after. So here's the inside of the assembled pieces. For this I've used a back stitch with a waxed linen thread, and then I've trimmed the seam allowance and cut notches in it. And so after this I'm going to turn it inside out and remove the basting stitches. At this point I sewed a separate lining using a lighter silk, and then here you can see it placed on a curved pillow, and I'm using this to iron down the seam allowance to the inside. And now I'm using the same corner of the pillow to do the same ironing of the seam allowance on the actual cap. So I've pressed the seam allowance, and then as you can see I've added more basting to keep the seam allowance down, because with the 2 layers of fabric it's kind of hard to keep it in place. And so now I'm going to add the lining in. So here you can see I've placed the lining inside of the cap and lined up the seams, and I've added more basting to hold it in place. And now I'm going to cut off the remaining seam allowance and bind the edge with a ribbon. So now I've bound the edge all the way around, and the next step is to remove all of the basting stitches and then apply the metallic lace. So I've sewn down the straight edge of the lace using a matching thread, and I'm now going to take tiny stitches to tack down the other side of the lace all the way around, and in order to turn the corner here I've taken 2 little tucks. Going back to the extant caps, a lot of them have ribbon ties, and so that's what I'm going to add now. I have filmed the end of this video like 7 times because it's really hard to film the end of videos, but this is the end of the video. So thank you for getting this far, and thank you for watching the whole video, and I hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned things. And if you have questions, please put them in the comments, and if you have comments, please put those in the comments, and please like and subscribe. I know I'm supposed to say that, but I also really would like you to like and subscribe. And I also really like to get comments, and I think that it's very fun. So I have more videos planned, and you should watch them, and I have to go eat dinner, so thank you, and goodbye.